an overview of the safety protocols to follow when working with artificial intelligence, but you should seek professional assistance before integrating AI into any business environment. Please use AI cautiously and safely.
Never share or upload anything to AI that you would not post on a public website like LinkedIn or Facebook. You would not go to Facebook and publish your social security number. You would not go to Facebook and publish your bank account and routing number. So nothing that you would not be willing to be put on a public website should you be putting into AI unless you're working with a professional AI developer or somebody, or making sure that you have the safety protocols in place. Otherwise, assume whatever you're sharing with that chat session is going directly out to the public. So this slide, and once again, this slideshow was actually also created by Gemini Notebook. The AI Copilot is not specifically Microsoft Copilot. The theme for this mini presentation is that you are the pilot and AI is the co-pilot. You do not want to take your hands off of the helm of that airplane, and you never want to let AI fly the ship by itself. Don't take anything that is generated by AI and turn around and hand it to somebody else as being fact unless you've double checked it. A little bit of a busy screen, but I had to generate this slideshow multiple times to get it simplified down. So the reality, 70% of companies globally use AI, but fewer than 40% have clear organizational guidance on safety use. For example, most companies have an employee agreement that they sign that says this is what we allow in the workplace and this is what we don't allow in the workplace. But only 40% or fewer of organizations have a clear AI guidance in writing that the employee has read and agrees to. What can AI do for you? It can increase productivity and the speed at which you generate materials or work. But it is prone to several weaknesses. One, it can have hidden vulnerabilities that you're not even aware of, such as you could have employees within your organization that are feeding sensitive information into like a free ChatGPT or a free Google Gemini. And not only does nobody know in the company that they're doing it, nobody even knows that they're using AI. So they're privately using it in the corner cubicle and they're handing out sensitive information, trying to do maybe a profit and loss report for their boss in order to get brownie points or whatever, but they're handing confidential information directly, basically to the public or to the AI. Hallucinations, I've seen this, it's getting so much better, but AI tools they're mathematical pattern guessing calculators. They're not fact checkers. So 66% of people use outputs without verifying them, and I've been guilty of that in the past. My team taught me to stop doing that because I shared a couple of things that I did some research on and I didn't diligently fact check them. And then they called me out on it because I had some statement of fact that I put in there that turned out to either be erroneous information or it was outdated. So I got embarrassed and I learned my lesson. And 56% of people have made mistakes as a result of that, like I did with my team, which means I lose credibility with my team. So I double check everything that I'm presenting to anybody other than myself. If I'm going to share information and if it's for my own benefit, I will stop and research it there. And the good news is the information that AI gives you normally has a site reference now. So if it pulls something from CNN's news website, it'll give me a link to the article that came from. And in fact, the whole thing about that company that got hacked for the $25 million or whatever, I got that blurb from Google Gemini, but then I clicked on the link and I read the actual news article to verify that that was real, that it wasn't just making any of it up. So it's a shortcut and it speeds up your work, but it's not the end all be all. There's still human guidance required. And then finally, cyber threats, AI-enabled fraud is projected to cost organizations $40 billion by 2027. And if I stop and think about all of the different ways that AI-enabled fraud can happen, whether it's through deep fakes, whether it's through false information, whether it's through phishing and all that, I would have to guess that that number is probably low, but I don't think there's any way to verify that number. It's just a projection. So, and supposedly that's what AI is really good at. So I'm just going to trust that it made a good projection. But honestly, I think that that number is probably a little low. All right, so the difference between public versus licensed artificial intelligence models. The main thing to remember that nothing in life is free. If you're using a free version of Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, the free part is that you are agreeing in the little agreement box you checked that says anything I provide during this session is available for your company to train on. So, for example, the good example that I gave to Megan earlier was if you were working up a business plan for your company in Charlottesville, Virginia, making widgets, and you gave it some information to work with, and it generated this wonderful business plan. Maybe you're going to take it to the bank to get a business loan and all that. If you generated it in the free version of an AI model like ChatGPT, then you basically gave them permission to use that anywhere they want. So they can use it generically as a training tool so that ChatGPT becomes better at writing business models for companies that make widgets. Or if somebody else in Charlottesville was talking to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, my mortal enemy is starting a company that makes widgets in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'd like for you to help me create a business plan." ChatGPT could literally take your business plan and drop it on their screen and say, "Look, is this what you were looking for?" And they'll be, "Oh my goodness, AI is magic." It's like, no, AI is a thief. It just took all that, and maybe you spent 10 hours working with ChatGPT to develop that plan, but you basically told the company that created ChatGPT, you can use this any way you want, and they just gave away your secret. So remember, in the free version, the public AI, it retains your conversation history, actively trains on your inputs and its outputs, and you're only supposed to be providing public, non-sensitive information only. So if you're writing an email to your cousin, if you're planning a vacation to Peru, those are generally things that I don't think you have to worry too much about somebody getting that information. But anything that's financially related or business plan related, you want to stop and think twice. Now, the licensed enterprise versions of all of these different AI models basically say, in exchange for the money you're paying this month, which typically is going to be around 20 bucks, I'm paying $99 a month for a very high-end advanced Google Gemini model because I want to use it aggressively. But when you pay for that license, they guarantee you, and I guess we have to take our word for it, that all of your data is not only going to be encrypted, but it's protected by university and enterprise contracts, meaning that they're promising you that if you create a business model using it, it's not going to use that information anywhere outside of your personal account. Inputs are blocked from AI training models, so nobody else is going to look at it to train on it. And it's good for internal operations, drafts, and approved data analysis, where you're trying to crunch some numbers for your company to figure out what your next quarter budget should be. So those are the things it's good for. Another looks a little busy at first, but it's pretty straightforward. It's how you determine how to minimize your risk as you share information. Include in your prompt general anonymized public data. It's general stuff that the public can see. Maybe the best spots to visit in Peru when you're on vacation. You can put together a vacation plan. I don't see where there's any real risk of that. But on the other hand, you would not want to give it sensitive data, especially for unlicensed tools. So no PII, personally identifiable information like SSNs or date of births, financial data, proprietary strategic plans, confidential research or unpublished findings, health information, or vendor contracts. And that's really important for like a doctor's or a dentist's office, not to be putting any specific patient information into an AI, because even though you might have a privacy agreement with that company, you still would want to have somebody's professional recommendation about whether or not what you're doing is safe or not. I would say if you don't know for sure it's safe, don't do it. Finally, something that I found out fairly recently, I'm embarrassed to say, but Megan found out today, is that AI tools are screen aware. So if you open up Google Gemini or let's say ChatGPT in Google Chrome, and you're doing a session with it and you're chatting with it, it is screen aware, meaning it sees the other tabs and the other documents and the other applications you have open. So if in the background or in minimize, you had your company's financial docs, opened and you go into a ChatGPT session, it has potentially the ability to reach in and look at that information. So close all of your sensitive documents before you launch an AI session.
And that's with the free and with the professional?
I believe it's both free and professional, but with the free, not only can it see it, but that information has now become public.
Yeah.
Whereas theoretically, for the paid version, like my Google Ultra, even though it may see other documents that I have open, supposedly that information would never go outside of my immediate account, unless I'm sharing an account with somebody, which I don't.
Yeah. Wow.
Good question. All right, home stretch on this topic. So let me move this out of the way. All right, the hallucination checkpoint, verifying your outputs. Be aware of fake citations. AI can invent facts with total confidence, often citing source links or studies that do not actually exist. And there have been multiple stories published online about people who were so convinced that, for example, they had this one guy had this, I don't remember the specifics, but he had this really good sounding business idea that required him to invest money into something he was going to, it might have even been something he was going to use AI to do, like providing some sort of an AI consulting service and charge for it. And his AI buddy, AI model, was so excited about his idea and convinced him that it was worth investing every penny he had into. And I think he invested, like, I wanted to say over 50,000, maybe $100,000. Like all of his assets went into that. And when it turned out to be a bust, and he lost all of his money because he never made anything off of it, and he talked to other people about what had happened, he was basically informed. It's like, you fell for the oldest trick in the book. Yes, an artificial intelligence engine is going to be encouraging about just about anything you want to do. It's also very flattering. I mean, anytime almost that I've ever come up with an idea and given it to Google Gemini and said, hey, what do you think about this? It tells me what a wonderful idea it is and how smart I am. So I've learned to not fall for that. And I've always been skeptical of it. But I think the example I gave, you don't know. So I think the example I gave to Megan earlier was like, well, maybe something that sounds totally stupid, like fried ice cream. Well, from a practical standpoint, if we didn't know that fried ice cream was a big, crazy, and popular thing, it might sound like an incredibly stupid idea. Turns out it's become a very great marketing idea for selling a product, but you wouldn't know either way. Either way, AI is generally going to tell you that sounds like a great idea. Now, what you could ask for is statistics to back it up. So in this part of the United States, would you project based on existing numbers and statistics I could do with this product? Then you're going to start getting more accurate information. You're going to start getting reference links that you can follow. But just basically, just when AI says something is a fact, you cannot take it as fact. I hate to say that. Unconscious bias. AI models replicate, try that again. Unconscious bias. AI models replicate biases present in their training data, and I will also add biases present in the person using them. If you get to have a ongoing interaction with a chat model and it knows that you like opera music, then in future conversations, it may reference the fact that it really likes opera music. So it's learning from you, it's watching you, and it's mirroring you. So be careful. Watch for skewed language regarding demographics, protected groups, or hiring profiles. Outdated information. AI models have knowledge cutoffs. That was especially true a year or two ago. So there were models out there that were available for public use, but the most recent information they had from was like 6 months or older. And so if you tried to ask them questions about a stock on the stock market and where it thinks it's going to go, it would be basing it on outdated information, but it wouldn't tell you that. Well, sometimes it would. Sometimes it would actually say, I only have information up to such and such a date, but based on that. But just keep in mind that a lot of times it will use information regardless of how old it is, because as far as it's concerned, it's information. So it's trying to give you what you want. Sometimes it's overly eager. Do cross-reference critical facts with current authoritative sources. So go to the source. Best practices for using AI, and especially in work environments, use watermarks, like something that says AI generated notes, not reviewed for accuracy. on unverified meeting transcripts to prevent permanent logging of errors. So just make sure that you notate anything that in a transcript of a meeting where maybe facts were discussed that haven't been actually verified. Make a note somewhere during the session that these have not been reviewed for accuracy, and the AI model will take that into consideration and not take them as facts, but as speculation. I guess it's the best way to do it. All right, so the human in the loop activation curve. Basically, the gist of this slide is that AI can get you to the 80% mark almost instantaneously. If you feed it information or you ask it about a certain topic, maybe ask it to generate an email for you or ask it to generate a report covering a certain topic, it will almost instantaneously get you 80% there, but the last 20% has to be filled in by a human being. You have to use critical thinking. You have to take accountability for what it's presenting. You have to use your professional judgment. You are the pilot. It is the co-pilot. So don't just take what it says as fact. I know that sounds like we're beating a dead horse there, but it's so important to not take anything AI says as being gospel. 64% of employees admit to putting less effort into their work when they're relying on AI. But honestly, the end result shouldn't necessarily take less work. It should be better end result. So something that would take 3 hours to do without AI probably will end up taking 2 to 3 hours with AI, but it's going to be much more complete, much more comprehensive, and there's going to be more time required to fact check it. So just you're not trading time, you're trading output, quality of output. All right, almost done with this slide section. Recognizing the AI-enabled threat. The old way of doing things, phishing emails with bad spelling and generic greetings. I used to be able to spot a phishing email like in 3 seconds based on just a couple of basic things. And it was obvious that it was trying to get us to do something that was malicious. Nowadays, with voice cloning and deepfakes, where you get convincing impersonations of trusted leaders, perfect phishing, meaning the email is not just grammatically correct and looks legitimate, but the hackers will use their AI to track down personal information about you and send you a personalized phishing email. They're not sending the same message to a million people. They're sending Joe an email that sounds like, hey, Joe, do you remember me? My name's so-and-so. I went to college with you at so-and-so, and we both played on the basketball team together. Do you remember the time that we won the blah, blah, blah tournament? I had a quick favor to ask of you. At this point, because it knows information about Joe, Joe's much more likely to trust what it's asking for and to respond. But that's only because AI was able to scoop in the information from him off the internet. And every single one of those phishing emails would have been customized for a specific recipient. And then there are fake tool updates, malicious links disguised as urgent AI system updates, which will detect that you're running an application and prompt you to install an update by clicking on a button. So the defense, do your secondary verification checks to any unusual request involving payments, system access, or sensitive data. And as I said a few minutes ago, if it feels suspicious, stop and take a look at it. If it doesn't feel right, then stop. Call the person who sent the email, but don't just say, oh, that's just me being paranoid. Nowadays, especially with AI out there, you kind of have to be paranoid. I think this is the final slide for this. So they give you a little thing to remember called capture. The letters stand for C for confidential. Never put sensitive information into public LLMs. Approved to only use vetted company licensed tools for internal work. What you do in your personal time is your business, and you still want to be cautious, but if you're at work and you're using an AI tool and you don't know it's been explicitly approved, go and ask somebody. You want to make sure it's okay. Strictly separate from work tasks. All right, so T treated as a helper. It's a drafting assistant, but it's not the pilot, it's the co-pilot. So you retain the final accountability for it. Unverified, it's you and captured, check all sources, citations and claims for hallucinations, which I'm doing more and more and more these days. Report if you flag suspicious, if you see suspicious activity or weird results, or you suspect there's been a data leak, please tell somebody in your company so that appropriate actions can happen. I mean, if sensitive data gets out and you pretend it didn't happen, you're just sitting there hoping that nothing's going to happen to it, but really you need to be responsible and take ownership. And then E is for engage. Ask for help from security teams or from other members of your team when the AI capabilities you're working with just don't seem clear to what you're trying to do. This is the final slide. Pre-flight checklist, know your tools. Confirm which ones are approved within your company and figure out which ones are best for which use case scenarios. Filter your data, meaning you can take a spreadsheet that maybe has important information that you want analyzed, but strip away all information within that spreadsheet that would identify who your company is, where you do your banking, anything that would be identifiable. So if it's just numbers, AI is fantastic with numbers. Give it profit and loss reports or whatever, but strip away any information that identifies who you are, and then own the output. Every time you hand out something to somebody else, or you take an output from AI and take it as being valid, then you're basically putting your seal of approval on it. So remember, you own the output. ChatGPT doesn't own the output. What do you not want to share with any AI model, especially free ones, without professional assistance? Personal identifiable information, protected health information, sensitive financial data, confidential corporate and legal information, authentication credentials, classified or national security information. Remember, if you wouldn't post it online, like in Facebook or LinkedIn, then don't share it with AI. Really easy rule of thumb to remember. So using and managing AI is a serious endeavor, requires a lot of human oversight. It's not a genie in a bottle or a silver bullet for all of your complex business needs. If you want to use AI to analyze your company's internal data, processes, or workflow, please consider hiring a professional AI consultant who will understand and advise you on the safe and proper implementation of AI tools and resources. PJ Networks does not currently offer those kinds of AI consulting services, but we are now starting to provide our clients with guidelines and resources to help steer them in the right direction. And I do predict that within the next year or so, we'll actually be starting to offer some AI consulting services. But don't hold me to that, but that's our goal.
The safety guidelines presented in this video are meant as a starting point for you on your journey into using artificial intelligence, but please refer to professional consultants if you want to integrate it into your workplace. Thank you for watching.